Hi, thanks for joining me, guys. My name is Ellie Edwards-Scott. I am co-founder of the Advisory Collective. We work with tech companies to help them land and launch into the UK market. I'll hand it over to my panelists to introduce themselves.
I can go first. So I'm Dean Robinson. I work as a programmatic lead at William Hill. I've been there since November 2018. My role is to sort of lead primarily a programmatic and display acquisition team here over at William Hill, and I was heavily involved in the sort of in-housing process that we undertook last year.
Fantastic.
And I'm Wayne Blodwell, the founder and CEO of the Programmatic Advisory. We're a programmatic consultancy, and one of the areas that we specialize in is helping brands navigate the kind of operating models that are available and, in some instances, help them in-house.
Fantastic, thanks guys. Right, I'll kick straight off and kind of dive into this. What I think would be great in terms of if we can give tangible takeaways for the audience, and that'll be brilliant. And obviously with both of your experience, that should be fine. So just to kind of start things off, what are some of the key considerations that a brand should have, or a brand should make when looking at in-housing? If I put this to you first, Dean.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'd probably say there's three key considerations I would look at. The first of all is transparency. Now, I think transparency was quite a big word in the programmatic sector for brands a couple of years ago. Maybe it's become less of a sort of buzzword, but it's important to have that sort of look and ownership of your own sort of tech stack, and that could be anything from creative to DSP contracts to brand safety tools. The next one might be cost saving. Will this actually save you money? Now, that could be different for different brands. I'm not sure, but that's something that needs to be looked at as well. And the third would be value. I think value is absolutely essential in here. Like, is in-housing sort of programmatic and display buying going to drive value to a company? And that could be whether, you know, if all the other channels are in-house, is there a value to that? Could be, are you closer to your own data sets? Are you closer to your own creative content? But from that perspective, those are the three key areas that definitely were front and foremost for William Hill, but also I think for most brands could do worse than looking at those three.
Have you got anything? Those are really good points, and in fact, some of those areas we'll kind of expand upon as we go through. But have you got anything to add to what Dean said, Wayne, in terms of when you're speaking to brands, what their kind of what their rationale and reasons are behind in-housing?
Yeah, I think, you know, you need to have a purpose for doing it, and that purpose can manifest in different ways. Could be, you know, more commercially feasible to do it, might be more strategic, might mean you're more agile as an operation, but you do need a purpose. I don't think you can set out on an in-housing journey just because you think it might be the right thing to do. I think you need to have a focus and incentive to do so. And I think then below that, you've got to be committed to spending enough to make it work. So if you're only spending sort of, you know, a small amount in programmatic per month currently, then it'll be difficult to make that sort of wash its face for hiring. Or you'd have ambitions to spend more. So probably those two, like you've got to have, you know, on top of Dean's, a purpose and also like a commercial commitment.
So some really good points raised there. So probably a flip side to the question, I suppose, is does in-housing work for all brands? And if not, why not? I'll put this to you first, Wayne.
No, it doesn't work for all brands. It certainly can work for some brands, for sure, but it doesn't work for everyone. And the reason for that is, as I said earlier, you know, not really spending enough or not enough commitment or focus from the business for it. You might be unable to get out of existing contracts, or you might struggle to hire the talent. So there's a bunch of reasons why it doesn't work. But if you can solve for those, then it does work.
Picking up on that one point there, so talent. So I'm going to put this to you first, Dean. So talent, we talk about talent a lot in programmatic and the issues we have attracting talent. How difficult then is it for a brand who's looking to in-house to attract and also retain the right type of talent?
I mean, I think the first thing to think about when you're in-housing as well and trying to attract talent is obviously there's advantages of being at wider sort of network agency groups in the breadth of advertisers that you work across. Most, and I'm going to hazard a guess, more 80% plus of programmatic traders are working for those network agency groups, if not more. So there's a lot of people out there, but they're used to working across different types of brands, different types of strategies. So first of all, it's identifying people that might maybe have an interest in the sort of industry that you're working in or a brand that you're promoting. And then beyond that, it's people that potentially want to learn other aspects of marketing as well. I think one thing that we've potentially seen is sometimes identifying people that maybe don't want to work in a programmatic silo and want to have a closer sort of impact and see closer to the creative that they can run, closer to maybe product teams for the brand that you work with, closer to other marketing channels. For example, William Hill in-house in programmatic was part of a larger sort of digital transformation project where most, if not all, of our digital buying is now in-house for every sort of channel. So identifying people that are interested in those areas and potentially it would be a step up as well. These sort of impact and what you have to do in-house. For a lot of people and a lot of sort of programmatic, maybe execs out there at agencies, this would be seen as a step up, but really it's down to the person. I can't say it was the easiest thing to do in the world. There's a lot of people that like working in that and difficult to convince some, but we're very pleased with just the recruitment job that we did. But it's really focusing on those areas as well and people that will have an interest in that.
Is that something that you, when you're working with brands, Wayne, is that something that you kind of help them navigate that whole, issue with talent and how to recruit the right type of talent? Is that something that brands often come across?
Yeah, it is definitely. I think there's a few things. I do think location is important. I think you often see many marketers are based outside of major cities because it's more cost efficient if you're like a big manufacturer. So sometimes attracting that talent can be difficult, like location wise. And also I think it's the type of brand that you are going to work for. So someone like William Hill, programmatic traders are probably quite like the synergies with sports betting or odds making, or there's synergies there. In others, it might be a bit more difficult. You don't just want to just chuck a load of money at pay a premium for a trader to come work for you. Somewhere it's not near them and a brand that they don't really get behind.
Yeah,
that just feels counterintuitive. So I think those two things probably are things brands have to struggle with. And then I think that just further to that, it's just retention. If you're, as Dee mentioned earlier, if you're just a couple of programmatic traders isolated in the business, it's very siloed and almost lonely. Whereas if you're integrated into like a bigger digital marketing team, you have much more success retaining them and also progressing them. So because it is a different type of profile you're hiring for as opposed to traditional marketing teams. I think those are probably the main considerations.
Definitely. I think that's important. It's something that you did mention before, Dean, in terms of kind of making sure that the team are embedded within the business. I think that's a real key consideration. It'd be really good to talk about the different stages, if you like, of in-housing, what they are and how you recommend a brand kind of navigates that. It'll be interesting to hear what William Hill went on in terms of your journey with in-housing.
Yeah, well, I guess one thing that I did advantage of was I started and I was hired by a lady called Polly Nash, who actually had experience in implementing in-housing at a previous company. So a lot of what we did was driven by her, and then I was kind of came in to help with that implementation. One key thing, and I think I've covered it before, is having those 3 pillars to start with, like, are you looking for transparency? Are you looking for cost savings? And we were also looking to see if we could get more value out of the channel in general. There were 3 key points. Now, there's a lot of things that went into that, such as sitting closer to your data teams, to your CRM teams, to your creative teams, all these aspects that would fall under the value, potentially cost savings in what you might be paying network agencies, and then obviously transparency. Now, we already had the transparency in a lot of the contracts that we owned. So for us, it was those other 2 points, like what was the value in that and building out a business case to that. The next stage is then, once that business case is signed off, having an understanding of how you're going to hire the team which is spoken about already, recruitment, and identifying the right people in the market. Once that's been done, it was then building out a migration plan with the agency, which I say would be step 3, and having a sort of transition date involved, which all depends on how quickly step 1 and step 2 go. So we can't really put times on this. For some companies can move very quickly and agilely, some would struggle. And I'd say right now, once you've sort of in-house and got the people used to managing the campaigns in-house, we're currently at step 4, which is more understanding how programmatic trading fits into the wider business. As far as back-end technology choices, is everything that we have done to date the right thing to do? So it's maybe technology choices, the creative tools that we use. That's the next stage, and that's when we've seen the advantages of in-housing already, as far as having the people work on the campaigns full time, etc. But now it's really, what can we do programmatically to enhance everything else that we're doing back end and behind the scenes? And that's probably the next stage, and that 4th stage is ongoing. That is the final stage, like getting the value out of programmatic by in-housing is this particular stage. But you can't get to that point without having a very clear process through points 1, 2, and 3.
I think you've made some really good points there in terms of having that kind of clear plan. Do you find, Wayne, that you're getting brands approaching you that maybe look at in-housing as a kind of, right, I'm going to do this, and they can kind of jump feet first into it without realising that there's all these different steps and stages, or do people generally have it all thought out?
No, I think that's where most brands will go wrong or experience some resource and cost pain down the road, is where they haven't got the upfront plan, haven't done some sort of feasibility assessment, and haven't thought about the requirements to transition. So I think having that upfront plan is really important. That due diligence, it only takes 4 to 6 weeks. It's not a massive upfront cost or piece of work, but it will help you lay out the way to go about doing the rest of your sort of that transition. And I think I think Dee mentioned it really well. I think at the end, once you do have an in-house team, if that's the route you go down, so how do you augment that? So, for example, if you are a small team and people are off, does the technologies you use, do they provide services to help run campaigns? Do you bring in external training people? Because sometimes in-house teams can be quite isolated, and all you talk about is your own brand, your own way of doing things. Sometimes third-party opinions can help. So it's a never-ending journey, the process, but the final phase is just the constant cycle of learning and improving once you have it.
And you mentioned Dean, in terms of working with an agency partner. How important is it for a brand who's going through the process to kind of work in conjunction with their agency partner?
It's really important. They are most in-housing scenarios. You have an agency partner external that is running those campaigns for you. Whilst you have, if you have your own contract, you have input, you can see what's happening in the campaigns. As you're building out those teams, it's absolutely essential to have a good working relationship with those people. I think, for example, most brands that in-house will still have an agency group managing their TV and print buying. And it's probably usually going to be the same group where they've decided to in-house some of the digital buying from. And there is a crossover. You are still part of one full wider marketing mix. Marketing doesn't end with digital. There's TV synergies, there's print synergies that often happen. A lot of the same partners, a lot of the same publishers that you're working across. So it's important to maintaining those strong relationships and have that in place. I think that's something that agencies could learn. And also there's a consultative arm to when you do in-house as well, which I think some agency groups are doing quite a good job of, which I've seen out there, in helping with that process, working with the external companies that are helping build out these business plans, and actually being quite aggressive in how they work with brands that want to in-house.
Has that been your experience as well, Wayne? Have when you are working with brands, do you find that it works well when the brand's in partnership with their agency, kind of going through that process?
Oh, totally. I think in the early days of in-housing, agencies saw it as a threat to their business, and then I would say were quite hesitant to support, almost disengaged. But now I think, because it's just become something which is kind of obviously happening at scale, they can't take that route. They have to support, and they've created services and structures to do that. So it's progressive agencies are thinking in that way, which is good to see. And and I don't, there's in-house, there's agency only, but there's a lot that's in between. So being able to support those models is basically the future of the agency.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's that flexibility, isn't it? As you say, it's happening. So embrace it and work out how you can evolve a relationship almost. And talking of relationships, for a brand that is in-housing or considering in-housing, how important is it to have those direct relationships, whether with publishers, technology vendors, etc.?
Yeah, it's absolutely key for us. We have very strong relationships with our key media suppliers, our key tech partners, everyone that we work with. We've kept that. I mean, one thing that I was very keen to do as I came over, my previous role was managing a programmatic marketplace with some of these partners, and I understood the value of that and maybe how that wouldn't be in place working at the advertiser side. So I think our team have been very good at maintaining and really having key relationships, constant contact with key exchanges, suppliers, everybody across the ecosystem. It's one thing that maybe could fall down in in-housing, and it's something that we identified as being absolutely essential for us to maintain, so that we can continue to get the best value out of everything that we do.
Is that something that you're seeing as well, Wayne, that it's really important for the brands to have that? And how you even help facilitating those relationships in many cases?
Yeah, I think so. I think, one of the concerns that in-house brands, I think, previously had would be they couldn't get the same rates as the agency network groups because they don't have the same trading scale. And, in some instances, that's true, traditional media, some traditional placements, etc. And it does exist in some programmatic technologies, but the reality is what you're foregoing in a rate is reasonably minor compared to what the upsides can be. Or you can work with your agency to use their contracts in smart ways. That's also a good approach. And I think when you are sort of owning these technologies, you have to bring procurement and legal departments on the journey with you, because some procurement teams within brands just don't have experience in what it's like to negotiate a DMP or DSP contract. So you need to kind of work with them to talk through these are different costs, here's why they are that cost, and here's what we get from them. And same with legal. Some of the contracts just look a little bit different to some things they might usually be familiar with, particularly with data. So you kind of want to bring them on your journey as well.
I'm conscious of time, so just a couple of points before we wrap up. We talked about some of the main benefits for brands that are in-housing. We haven't touched really that much on data, and I think data would be a key consideration, or a brand's having more control or ownership of their first-party data would be a key consideration. Do you think that's been one of the benefits for yourself, Dean, since William Hill is in-housed? And then also, what are some of the other benefits that you've experienced?
Yeah, I think a key benefit has been closer to the CRM teams and first-party data and what you can potentially do to engage with your existing customer set. In-house and closer to the product teams as well. I think the guys that are running our sort of retention reactivation campaigns have huge benefits from that, and we continue to see that all the time. So that's absolutely essential. I think most brands see a benefit from that. Other advantages is definitely been in the actual volume of time people can spend on the campaigns. Sometimes agencies have FTE models, sometimes they don't. We've seen small optimizations go quite a long way sometimes as well, so that's been a great benefit. And just being close to the creative teams as well. For sports betting gambling, the odds have ever changed, everything's always moving. Having like a strong sort of creative team, a strong in-house operations team as well is really important to be able to work across that. So that's something that we've seen huge benefits from. That was harder to navigate when we had an agency managing it, quite frankly.
Okay. Any last thoughts in terms of benefits for brands, Wayne?
I think the number one is just integration, just having it sit in and amongst the rest of the business. Because when we talk about data, we mean existing or prospective customers. Navigate around that, all the operations, whether it's creative, media, CRM, etc., website, having it integrated. That is the biggest benefit. But as we've talked through today, some challenges, some areas of opportunity, but I think that is probably number one biggest benefit.
Thanks so much. And yeah, thanks so much. I think we're wrapping up now. Thanks, guys.